And here in the Malaysian HR community, we're not alone. The last few weeks have shown how people have come together with these kind of free webinars um, to share knowledge and experience and ultimately to share kindness and to be there for each other. I've reached out to quite a few of my ex-bosses and also ex-senior HR candidates to help me with certain problems and issues. And their advice has come very fast and it's come very free. So it's although it's a terrible situation, it's really revealing a lot of the good in the world. So for me, from a professional point of view or from a recruitment point of view, actually these times are not so strange. I've been recruiting remotely for almost a decade. From here in Malaysia, I've been hiring for more than 30 countries across the world. Um, I often never meet my candidates and never meet my hiring managers. And I've even been involved across Africa and Europe, hiring people for startup offices. So there's literally nothing in that country, and I'm recruiting a startup team in that country. No one in the company meets them until after they join. So although I've never been in obviously a pandemic situation before, I have been recruiting remotely for a long time. So I hope what I have to say is very useful to you all. So the topic of my discussion is really recruiting remotely, or as I like to do it, hiring from my sofa. So I've split today's session into 12 different key topics. I could probably talk for 30 minutes on each topic, but I've got about 20 minutes to do the whole 12. So I'm going to jump through them quite quickly, and it's really going to be the basic information. But actually, that's very important. I found if I look back at my career when I've really screwed up, it's because I've been too ambitious and too cocky and I've ignored the basics. So it's really good to understand the basics. So today we're going to be focusing on what is your situation, get everything you need before you need it, how have you been recruiting in the past and does it still work, what the heck is a culture playbook, take remote control of the job brief and hiring process, video interviewing checklist, what you must know about any candidate, getting offers accepted and making sure they turn up on the first day, keep your successful candidates close, but your rejected candidates closer. What does a recruiter do when there's no recruiting to do? Don't let your team die, and share the love always. So let's jump into what is your situation. So I've consulted with many different recruitment teams and obviously worked internally with many teams. And one thing that always comes up is, you start and you ask how many positions you have open, and nobody knows. You meet a team of 5 recruiters and they say, well, I'm working on 3 or 4, and the other guy says I'm working on 8. But actually no one really knows how many positions are open. And then it takes them 2 or 3 days to get you a definitive list of all the positions that they think are open. And then you go to the hiring manager for each one of these roles and they say, oh, actually, no, we hired someone internally for that role, or we canceled that role a few weeks ago. And you find that a lot of these teams are working on positions that don't exist anymore, that aren't priorities, and essentially wasting time. And as a recruiter, if most of you in this call come from a recruitment background, you know that time is the most important thing for a recruiter. There's never enough hours in the day. So you don't want to waste any time. So the most important thing when you start is to really understand your situation. You need to know how many roles you have open, if any. I know a lot of companies have completely frozen hiring right now, and we're going to talk about that later. But you really need to know how many roles you have open. Are any of the positions frozen or cancelled? Are there any plans to freeze hiring? What stage is each role at? What positions are the most urgent? These are really important things. It sounds like basic, but it really stops you wasting a lot of time. So step 1 is really to open up quick communication channels, especially in these times when we're working remotely away from our colleagues. You need your managers, your hiring managers, your leaders to make you part of discussions when they're talking about cancelling roles, when they're talking about hiring internally. You need to make sure that you are given the information that you need as quickly as possible and that you're not left out of these discussions, because it really impacts you. So Step two, creating a very detailed hiring list. So once you've got those communication channels open, it gives you the chance to create a definitive hiring list. A lot of people use Google Sheets or Excel or some other kind of shared sheets. It can work, but if you've got multiple people updating it tends to get left behind. Having a great applicant tracking system makes a huge difference. Things are going to change quickly, and you need something that can capture all the information on hiring in real time and in a lot of detail. So that moves us on to step three. Once you have a very detailed hiring list, you need to set up a flexible action plan. Which positions are the highest priority? Again, you don't want to be wasting your time on low priority roles or roles that might be cancelled. And you need to distribute the roles evenly between your recruiters. And as things change, as roles get cancelled, sometimes you need to swap those roles around between the recruiters. So you need to make an action plan, but it needs to be very flexible. Which leads me on to the last step. Hey, get off your butts. It won't be the only time I say this. Recruitment is a high performance role. It's a business development role, and it's a business growth function. You need to get off your butts and you need to work hard. That's almost more important than anything else in recruitment. Is just the volume of your activities is what eventually fills roles. So that's what is your situation. So then moving on to get everything you need before you need it. I'm naturally an unprepared person. I tend to wing and it often comes back to thinking. So having the ability to really understand what you need before you need it is very important. I tend to write things on my hand when I forget them, so I'm going to do the same here. Obvious stuff: laptop, phone, chargers, internet connection. LinkedIn Recruit to See is probably the most important tool that you'll have in terms of sourcing candidates. Any kind of video calling software, I'm not going to say which are the best. They're all good, and you need one. An applicant tracking system, again, just to know what's going on and have full visibility of the roles. Coffee, absolutely essential, and job boards. The last two are kind of optional, but actually with these things, I can recruit for any position anywhere in the world from my sofa. I literally don't need anything else. Any position anywhere in the world, with these things, I can do it. I forgot one thing. Again, you need to hustle. None of these things matter if you don't work hard, if you don't hustle. It's the most important thing in recruitment. It's so important, I tattoo it to the back of my hand. So moving on. How have you been recruiting in the past? And is it still working? Recruitment has been stuck in the ice age for years, recruiting in newspapers and then advertising on job boards. Now people are starting to see the power of social media, but there's still a tendency to rely on the old ways, as in going onto job boards, posting badly written job ads, and just sitting and waiting for candidates to apply. It's not working anymore. Even though hundreds of companies, if not the majority of companies, still use job boards, it's just a dying channel. So what I've always relied on really heavily is LinkedIn, whether it's the standard basic LinkedIn package or whether you use the paid LinkedIn recruiter tool. This is absolutely the #1 tool for finding people, whether it's using the LinkedIn recruiter tool to actively headhunt, which is unbelievably powerful, or promoting your brand directly on LinkedIn as the social media platform. Job boards are now being replaced by employer branding and social media. The ability to have that control and create your own job ad and job platforms via social media. So LinkedIn, obviously, absolutely essential, but Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, these things are invaluable, and best of all, they're mostly free compared to JobStreet or other job boards that you'd have available. And not only are they free, but they're more effective, and you get much better quality. If you think about job boards and who uses them, and if you think about who your perfect candidate is, for any role that you're hiring, you should be thinking, I only want the best person in Malaysia for this role. And if you think about who the best person is, they're probably not looking for a job. You know, if they're the best person in Malaysia for that role, they're probably already working for a good company and they're doing well and they're not looking for a job, which means they won't be on Job Street. And if you put a job board, if you put an advert on a job board, they're not going to see it. But almost definitely those candidates, they are on Facebook, they are on Instagram, they are on Twitter, they are on YouTube. So being able to put some employer branding where they are is often enough just to get them to say, hey, actually, let's check this out. So whether you use those kind of channels or not, when you are looking at what channels you want to use, the key things you have to bear in mind are speed, quality, and cost. There's many more metrics you can measure recruitment channels by, but definitely these are the most essential. And then moving on, you need to have an employee referral program. It's so valuable and it's so effective. Again, a lot of people don't utilize it, but a lot of studies have shown that candidates who are referred are often higher quality and tend to stay with the company longer. So not having it, you're essentially putting a nail in your coffin. So again, I can't go into too much detail, but really when you're setting up an employee referral program, it needs to be attractive from a financial point of view. The rewards for the employee needs to be very, very good. It needs to be highly visible. A lot of companies do have a good employee referral program from an attractive point of view, but actually it's no one knows about it. So you have to make it very, very visible. You have to make the updates very regular. So as in every time a new role is open, you have to alert the entire employee group. And it also has to be trackable. One of the biggest complaints you get about employee referral programs is that you refer a candidate and then you never know what happens after that. So giving employees the ability to see what stage their referred candidates are at is very, very important. Don't underestimate the power of an employee referral program. Setting one up will save you a lot of sourcing, a lot of headhunting, and potentially a lot of money if you look at the price of an employee referral program compared to paying headhunters, which can run into hundreds of thousands. And then lastly, in terms of how you recruit, you need to look at your processes. Again, a lot of recruitment is done the same way it was done 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. When it comes to processes, they don't always work for recruitment. But a lot of companies still heavily lean on processes that were written decades ago. For something like payroll, a process works really, really well. You do X, Y, Z, and you succeed. With recruitment, there's so many variables. There's so many human decisions that you don't have control of. Processes tend to just get in the way. So one of the key things you have to do is look at your processes. If you do work for a company that insists you follow certain processes, you've got to take control and you've got to say, this process isn't working, and you've got to design a process which is results orientated rather than task orientated, which is what a lot of recruitment processes are at the moment. So really take a deep dive and look at what your processes are and are they adding value and what control do you have over the processes. So then moving on, what the heck is a culture playbook? Maybe I should stop here and say I've got a very low attention span. I can't concentrate for that long. So doing a talk like this when I'm doing slides, I get bored very, very quickly. So I have to make them amusing to me. I have to make me laugh. So sorry for the corny slides, but it's what I need to do to keep me sane when I'm doing these things. So what the heck is a culture playbook? A culture playbook is something which is going to define your culture and make it explicit in a way that you can share, which again, for your employer branding is super, super important. A lot of people talk about culture and they talk about culture fit and culture interviewing, but often they do these things without actually having a defined culture. And if you ask 10 people in the same company what their culture is, you'll get 10 different answers, which means it's not defined, which means you don't have a culture. You just have an employee experience, and it's different for everyone. And often people will say they interviewed this person for culture fit and they think they're a good culture fit, but they've got no idea what they're measuring them against. And really, when they say they're a good culture fit, what they're really saying is that I like this person, and it doesn't really go any deeper than that. So it's very important to sit down and define your culture. I read a good article by a guy called Jack Daly, which really helped me organize my thoughts on this. And he talks about being able to define how you give recognition to your employees, define how you communicate as a company, both internally and externally, define how you give empowerment to your employees, and also define how you provide personal and professional development for all of your employees. And if you can define these 4 things, then you've pretty much got a very well-rounded and well-defined culture. And digging into why these things are important, and especially why are they important to a recruiter. Again, leaning on some other articles that I read to help explain it. A lady called Shelby Jones really explains it quite well, in that it really helps to attract and retain. You know, once you do have a culture that is defined, you can use it in your employer branding. You can use it to promote truthfully what your culture is like, and that will attract hopefully people with a similar culture. But it also helps you retain your employees. It helps you unite your employees, helps you identify the types of behaviors that do well in your company, but also the types of behaviors that don't do well. It helps you incentivize culture champions within your company. How do you incentivize people who are the ambassadors of your culture? It helps you create these kind of mini rituals. I've worked in many companies that they all have their individual culture rituals. Some it's high fives, others it's just certain words and sentences, but it all goes to creating a culture and a unity, which is very, very important. And of course, once you've got a defined culture, it does mean you can invoke it more often at every touch point with employees, whether it's in recruitment, whether it's in performance management, whether it's in workshops and things like this. Being able to lean on your culture more often really, really helps. And if a lot of you are recruiters, you might be thinking, this is not my job. You know, there's other people in HR who are supposed to focus on these kind of things, but often they don't, and often they do it badly. And at the end of the day, you are the one who this really impacts. It's really going to help you attract employees, and it's really going to reduce attrition, which in turn means that you have to do less recruitment, and because you're doing less volume, you can concentrate on higher quality. So if this is not being done in your company, you should take charge. And if it's being done badly, again, you should take over. Another article I read defines it very well. Define it, share it, own it. I like it because it makes it sound like a Beyonce song, but it's very easy to understand that way. So again, it might not be thought of as a traditional recruitment task, but hey, it's going to make your life 10 times easier. So move on to another important subject: taking control of the job brief and the hiring process. Again, I've taken so many job briefs, and so many times the hiring manager just isn't interested in having a conversation with you. They just want to give you a job description which was written very, very quickly, which simply lists a couple of tasks, some very generic experience that they need, and they talk about the hiring process just very, 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 very casually. It's not enough. If you want to be sourcing the best candidate for the role, you need to take full control of the job brief. And to give you an idea of the types of questions that I ask, I'm not going to go through these questions. I've written an ebook on talent acquisition that contains a very detailed list of how I take a job brief. But essentially, I just want you to see the volume. So I have 1 page, 2 page, 3 pages, 4 pages. These are all questions and things I need to go through the hiring manager, questions I need to ask them in order for me to understand the role properly. And if you don't understand the role, you can't hire. I'm sure many of you have been in situations where you have a job description and you find candidates who are perfect, absolutely perfect for that job description. But when the hiring managers meet them, they don't see any relevance at all. And that's because there's no link between the job description and the actual role itself. So you need to save yourself a lot of time by spending more time on the job brief and making sure it's correct. And essentially it comes down to a couple of things: changing your attitude, I think oftentimes recruiters feel that the hiring manager is the boss. He's not. He has his job. If you're hiring for a marketing manager, hey, the head of marketing, their job is marketing. It's not recruitment. Your job is recruitment, and you're the boss of recruitment. So when they give you a job description and say, go hire me someone, you have to say, no, you need to sit down with me. You need to change your attitude that you are the boss and not them. And you need to take control, and you need to get their time, and you need to get them to give you their time. So that you can get all the information that you need. And you need to train your interviewers. In the hiring process, I've lost so many candidates simply because the interviewers were not experienced. They didn't treat the candidates well, and they also weren't able to get the kind of information from the candidate that they needed. So you need to take the time to train your interviewers. It feels like it takes a lot of time, but actually you will lose candidates through bad interviewers. So it's something that you need to take time to do. You need to plan the interview process. And I'm not talking about the number of interviews or whether there's assessments or things like that. I think the hiring manager can have control over those kind of things. But I'm talking about what happens in those interviews. Quite often, if there's 5 rounds of interviews, the candidate is asked the same questions over and over again. You need to plan what's going to happen in those interviews with the interviewers, and make sure that they're all focusing on different areas and that they have a different agenda and a different goal in terms of what information that they want to get from the candidate. There's no point having 5 interviews if they're all the same interview. So make sure you plan that interview process. Use scorecards. Scorecards are a great way to ensure consistency between interviewers and also the quality of the candidates. It's a little bit hard to do offline, but if you have an applicant tracking system, especially one like VUCA, we use scorecards. It makes it easy to judge candidates on how they answer every single question, and then really get to assign a score to that candidate overall, and use that in the selection process. And lastly, share your feedback every day. Again, in this remote world, you should be getting on a call with everyone in the recruitment process at least 2 or 3 times a week, if not every day, and saying, what are the updates? What happened in the interview? Saying, I was not able to find out this or that about the candidate, so please, next interviewer, can you focus on this area? Really making sure that the whole hiring team understands what we know about the candidate and what we don't know and what we want to know, and therefore they can change their interviews to focus on those things. Super important. And moving on to the interview checklist itself, and this is going to be very basic stuff. It's good to actually have a checklist and check it off with every action that you do. I've been screwed over so many times when I simply forget to send an email invite. I organize the time over the phone and I say, I'm going to send you an invite with the hiring manager, and I just forget, and I'm screwed. So it's very, very important to have a checklist and use it. So the first one, obvious, email invite to candidate hiring manager. Yeah, it's not rocket science, but again, with remote interviewing these days, you need to say explicitly in that email how to enter the video call and what they need to do in advance, like downloading any software or anything like this. You can't leave it to the moment of the interview to do it. They need to know in advance. So make sure you explain explicitly how to enter the call. And after you send the email, send a WhatsApp follow-up straight away to say that you sent them an email with all the information that they need. Again, with all the digital tools that we have nowadays, like WhatsApp, like Slack, like all these other tools, communication is moving almost 100% to these tools, and it's moving away from email. So make sure they do see the email. But also on the morning of the interview, make sure you WhatsApp the hiring manager and the candidate just to remind them, and also 5 minutes before. And I'll tell you why. You know, I've set up interviews, let's say for 4 p.m. and it gets to 3:55, and I message the hiring manager to say that their candidate has arrived. This is a face-to-face interview, and the hiring manager messaging back and says, I'm sorry, I called in sick today. What what the fudge? You've got an interview. You could have told me any time during the day. But it happens more often than you think. People don't prioritize recruitment often, and you're left in these very, very awkward situations which don't make the company look good. So make sure you message the hiring manager and the candidate early in the day to make sure they're going to be around. Again, obvious, charge your devices, keep your chargers handy. It sounds obvious, but we forget all the time. Webcam positioning. Again, I've interviewed people who spend the first 5 minutes of the call trying to get their webcam in a good position where they look good, et cetera, et cetera. It's super, super annoying when you're trying to ask them important questions. And so I would assume that it's also annoying for the candidate if the hiring manager is doing the same. So before calls, make sure you've got it set up already. Join the call a few minutes before to make sure that you're the first person on the call and you're not leaving the candidate waiting. Try and make sure your internet connection is as good as possible. It's not always in your control. In fact, it's largely out of your control. Your internet connection can just drop, but do what you can to make sure the connection is going to be strong. Say your prayers to the God of Wi-Fi, and kind of cross your fingers. But since you know it's out of your control, you need to have a backup plan. Most of you will have your home internet, but also your mobile data that you can switch to. But even in the very worst case scenario, make sure you have the candidate's number saved on your phone. So if there's just no internet, you can drop them a quick SMS to say, hey, there's no internet, can we reschedule? Again, you don't want to leave the candidate hanging. You don't want yourself to look unprofessional. So have these backup plans. What are you going to do when the internet fails? And then moving on to more soft skills. You need to smile in these calls. It sounds stupid, but video calls make people feel uncomfortable. I've been doing it for 10 years. I still don't really like it. You need to make the candidate relax, and you do need to spend a few minutes talking casually to them before you jump into the interview. And you absolutely need to make them feel comfortable. You need to make them like you. You need to gain their trust. You're going to be asking them a lot of deep questions that make them question themselves, and they're not going to open up to you and give you the information that you need unless you make them feel comfortable and unless you gain their trust. Probably one of the most important soft skills for a recruiter, being able to gain people's trust quickly and easily. And you need to always be selling, especially when you're recruiting remotely, and the only thing the candidate might know about your company is what you tell them. They don't get to see the office. They don't get to meet people face to face. You need to start selling and talking about the company from the moment you start the call. You don't leave it to the end when you're negotiating. You promote the company and you talk about the positives as soon as you start talking to the candidate. And we touch on this again later in the call. And then lastly, you also need to train your interviewers on these points. Super important that your interviewers know this too. Again, a lot of interviewers, they're inexperienced, and because they're inexperienced, they think they need to take control, and they take control by being sometimes arrogant and rude and presumptuous. You need to make them understand the importance of making the candidate feel comfortable, making them like you, and making sure you gain their trust. So then on to what you must know about any candidate. Wow, that's a great CV. But what you must know, what is their expected salary? Of course, you need to know that, but you also need to know what do they think about what do they think their market worth is. It's very hard when someone says their expected salary to be able to tell them, hey, you're dreaming. We can't offer you that. But it's slightly easier to do it when you ask them what their market worth is, and then you can say that the market isn't paying that much at the moment. It takes a little bit of the negativity out of it, but it also really lets you understand where they're coming from as well. But what you really need to focus on is what they like about their current role, what they like about their company, their boss, what don't they like about their role in their company and their boss, what will they do if they get a counter offer, and why, understanding their motivations behind these things, and what are their long-term career and life goals. These sound like generic questions, but they're super important, because you absolutely need to understand what are their push factors and what are their pull factors. Push factors are what is pushing them out of their current company, and pull factors are what could pull them towards your company. This is what you need to know to always be selling. There's no point talking about the positives of your company if the candidate isn't interested in those particular positives. You need to understand what's important to them, what they want, and then you can pair that with what's happening in your company and really promote how your company can help the candidate. It also helps you screen candidates out. If you understand why they don't like their current job, or why they don't like their current company, and you feel those reasons would be the same in your company, you can say, hey, I understand you don't like those things, but actually it'll be fairly similar in our company. So it really helps you screen your candidates out without you wasting time, without them coming on board and then realizing they don't like it. It wastes everyone's time, and it's bad for your employer brand. But for me, most importantly, is understanding their pull factors, understanding what they want out of life, and kind of knowing when your company can help them out with that. And in the long term, when they join and you see them grow and you see them get the mentoring that they want, and you see them their life developing in the way that they describe to you over the phone, it's an enormous sense of satisfaction, and probably what motivates me the most in my recruitment career. Earlier on in my career, I focused on commission when I worked for a recruitment agency. I never really liked that job. And then I moved in-house, and although it's essentially the same thing, the focus changes from earning commission to making people happy. And that's when I suddenly really started enjoying my job. And if you're in-house recruitment for money, you've made a mistake because there's not much money in-house recruitment. But what there is a huge potential to make other people happy, and therefore make yourself happy. So really focus on these areas. And then getting offers accepted and making sure they turn up on their first day. Again, how many candidates do you get to offer stage and then they reject the offer, or even they accept the offer, but then they have 2-month notice period, and sometime within that 2 months, they call you and say, hey, they don't want to accept anymore, or even they just don't turn up on the first day. Again, it wastes so much time. You've got to start the recruitment process over again. So the more people you can get to accept offers, the higher you can get that offer acceptance ratio, the less work you have to do. And it comes down to a couple of things. You have to make sure your interviewers are having as much contact with the candidate as possible, as in whether it's the hiring manager or someone from the team. After the interview, they should always be contacting the candidate and saying, thanks for spending some time with me, really making the person feel appreciated. After the last rounds of interviews, before you make the offer, you need to do a wrap-up call. And in that wrap-up call, you need to be asking questions to really understand how the hiring manager feels how the candidate feels about the role, how they feel about their potential boss. And now that they know more about the role, what's the magic number that's going to make them accept the offer? You don't want to give them an offer until you know what offer they will accept. You don't want to do the negotiation after the offer. You want to have been spending the whole interview process getting them ready for an offer that they're going to accept. So when you finally go on to the next round of making the offer letter or making the offer, and you should make the offer over a video call, not by WhatsApp, not by email. You should make it over a video call so you can see their face, their expression. But when you do that, you should already know if they're going to accept or not, because you've done your due diligence. You know everything about them. You know what the magic number is to make them accept. So you shouldn't be going into that call nervous that they're going to reject the offer. You should already know. But of course, candidates being candidates, whatever offer they get, they might want to negotiate. You want to do everything you can to avoid the negotiation by doing everything else in the lead up to avoid it. But sometimes you have to, in which case, that's when you have to turn off your kind of friendly face and actually get down into it and kind of lay the rules down and make sure that you are in control of that situation and not the candidate. But then what happens when they finally accept? Again, I've been in countless times in my early career when I would get the offer acceptance and then think that's my job done, and then leave it. And of course, the person doesn't turn up on their first day. So you need to keep people warm. You absolutely need to keep them warm. You need to be painting pictures in their heads constantly. You need to be dropping them messages that you've got their laptop ready. We're setting up a desk for you. You've got to be able to send them welcome emails. The CEO or the hiring manager, a lot of companies pre-record welcome emails from a CEO or a director. It's great to have those things that you can just send straight to the candidate, making them feel that they're already part of the company before they've joined. Assign a buddy to the person, make sure the buddy contacts them and explains what's going to happen on their first day. Again, it's all about making them feel part of the company, part of the family, and part of the culture way before they actually join. The hiring manager should be calling them, and you should be asking them to refer candidates for your other roles, making them feel like they're already contributing to your company. And again, you might be thinking this will take a long time. It's a lot of tasks to do. It'll save time in the long run. And the best thing is, hey, I'm sorry, I'm going to do a very big plug for Brio HR here. Brio HR has an amazing onboarding platform that essentially automates all of these tasks so that you set it up once, and then you can just press a button when someone accepts, and it does all of these things for you very quickly, very easily, and it will seriously reduce the ratio of people that pull out of offers. So moving on to the next one. Keep your successful candidates close, but your rejected candidates closer. For me, a lot of people just ignore their candidates that don't make it. For me, they've been one of my biggest sources of new candidates. If you look at how many candidates you hire to how many candidates you reject, per role, I reject maybe 10 to 15 candidates that I speak to. I'm not talking about people who apply. I'm talking about candidates that I actually talk to. Per role, between 10 and 15. And if you increase that, if you times that by 100 roles per year, that's a lot of candidates, and they all have a big network. So it's really important to stay in touch with your rejected candidates. Make sure you send them feedback when they get rejected. Make sure you talk to them. Make sure that they have a positive experience, even if it's getting on a call with them and saying how to improve their CV or how to improve their LinkedIn profile. It makes a big difference, and these people are going to be the most likely to support you when you need referrals, when you need people to like or comment on your social media posts, and in the future when you work for another company and you have a role that's perfect for these candidates. I don't know how many times in the last 2 years I've seen a candidate that I really want for one of my roles, but I remember that about 5 or 6 years ago, when I was inexperienced, I rejected them and I didn't even tell them. I just left them hanging. And so now when I contact them, they don't want to talk to me, and I've shot myself in the foot. So keeping those rejected candidates warm, keeping them close, is going to save you a lot of time and a lot of headache later. And it's just the right thing to do also for your employer brand. So moving on. Don't let your team die. So I don't know if a lot of you on the call are solo recruiters or if you have large teams. It's hard working remotely. I think we're all experiencing it. You don't have the day-to-day interaction with your teams and with other people. And if you're a recruitment team leader, it's your responsibility to make sure your team is okay. So you need to do daily team calls. I mean, even when I work in an office, every single morning I do catch-ups with the team, just to go through the roles one by one, understand how many CVs they've sent, how many interviews are arranged, how many offers they've got coming in, what are the roles that they're struggling with. Super important to understand that. What are the problems that you're facing or they're facing, and what are the solutions that you can give to each other. Super important to have these calls as regularly as possible. It really helps to relieve tension because recruitment is a tough role. It's a stressful role, and you need to lean on your teammates to help you relieve that tension. You need to reinforce your culture. You can't do that over email or WhatsApp. You need to be talking to each other, and you need to be helping each other out. And you should be inviting other members of the HR team. Not to everyone, but some people have solo roles. Some people do feel isolated, and it's good to invite other people from other teams to join your call. Not to mention your hiring managers. Give them a window into how the recruitment process works for you guys, and let them understand exactly where you are in the process for their role. So it's very, very important. Don't underestimate how much isolation people feel, and how your team's performance is going down just due to not having that human contact and not feeling part of the team and not feeling part of the company. Everything you can do to reinforce those ideas is super, super important. And again, it seems like it's a time suck, but in reality, it's going to save you time in the long run as performance increases. I think we touched on this a little bit earlier. What does a recruiter do when there's no recruitment to do? Very, 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 very tough situation for a lot of people who suddenly realize their company has frozen recruitment with the current situation. So what the hell are they going to do? Very, very, very easy. Literally everything else. So as a recruiter, I talk about branding. I talk about implementing a culture playbook. I talk about bringing an applicant tracking system in and all this technology. But in reality, I never have time to really concentrate on it and focus on it. I'm so busy doing day-to-day recruitment, sourcing, interviewing, arranging interviews, etc., etc. This is the dream time for a recruiter. Having time where you can really focus on developing your brand, producing content for your brand, rewriting these old decrepit job ads and recruitment processes, sourcing for new applicant tracking systems or recruitment technology. There's so much you can be doing, and it's the perfect time to do it when your actual recruitment needs are quite low. Really start to set yourself up and create a new base for where you're going to recruit from in the future. Wow, it's almost a dream situation for a recruiter to have that freedom of time to jump into a lot of these things that normally they just don't have time to do. So use this time widely, concentrate on literally everything else apart from recruitment. And then finally, I want to talk about sharing the love. As I mentioned before, I get a lot of motivation from the happiness that comes from giving, making other people happy. And in this time, in the next week, month, etc., there's going to be a huge amount of people out of work. And they're going to turn to recruiters. They're going to be messaging you. I'm already getting tons of messages on LinkedIn every day from people who are looking for jobs. And I think we have a responsibility to help them. I used to ignore these kind of things. You know, people send me random messages on LinkedIn, and I used to ignore them. And I felt this overwhelming feeling of unhappiness because I thought I'm just too busy and I can't help these people. So then I decided just to say no. I'm going to help them. Every single person that messages me on LinkedIn or something like this, I'm going to help them. And the quick way that I found to do it was to write 10 kind of different messages that I just keep in a Word document that give tips on CVs, that give tips on LinkedIn profiles, that give tips on finding a job. And I just have that always open. And when someone messages me, I just copy paste one, send it, and you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed the replies that you get. People saying, "Wow, thank you. I sent over 100 messages, and you're the first person to apply. Thanks so much for the tips." You'll get a bigger sense of satisfaction from doing this than filling every single role that you would open. I think in the times to come, there's going to be so many tough situations for people out of jobs, and we've got a responsibility to help them. They're going to be reaching out to us. So please do what you can to share the love. We're in unique positions where we can help people, even if it's not in our own company. Most of us have big networks, and finding ways to share CVs across networks is going to make a huge amount of difference in people's lives and how they can provide for their families. So to end my presentation on a positive note, share the love, live long and prosper, and I wish you all good fortune in the wars to come. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, John, for the very interesting session. All right. So without further ado, I would like to jump on to our next speaker. So Ilan Govan is our customer success manager in Health Metrics. So I'll just pass it to him since we're kind of like running out of time. So Ilan, feel free to share your screen and start your presentation, yeah?
Yep, thank you, Siti.
Right.
Can you hear me there?
Yep.
Yep, all right, thank you. Thank you for the very warm introduction. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is having a pleasant day. First of all, thank you, John Cohen, for kicking things off this morning with a very insightful presentation. One second, I'm just sharing my screen. I believe everyone can see my screen. All right, so I've just gone into presentation mode. Yeah, good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. I know it's a very depressing time during this MCO. You know, I went out grocery shopping just the other day, and just a few human again. Actually, one of the highlights of my week. So yeah, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Ilan Tama. I'm the customer success manager here at Health Metrics. Basically, what we do in our department is to ensure that our client finds success in using our product. And also we look into the data of our clients and advise them accordingly based on the analytics that we have. Now, today's topic that I'm going to discuss is HR process automation in a VUCA world. Now, first off, I'm just going to briefly explain the topic today. What is business process automation? It is basically technologically enabled automation of complex business processes, which is also known as digital transformation. It's basically streamlining and integrating business processes using software applications throughout the organization. Now, you take, for example, a leave management system. If you've previously been manually managing your leaves, whereby your employees will need to submit a request via email for approval, and you will then keep track of it on an Excel sheet. And now you have actually adopted a leave management system where everything is automated. Now there's actually a form of digital transformation. You have actually achieved digital transformation. Now, we've got a lot of emails coming in asking what's VUCA. So, just out of curiosity, how many of you here knows what we mean by a VUCA world? Just drop us your answer in the chat box so we don't have to interfere with the audio in this session. All right, I actually can't really see the chat box, no worries. But thank you for that. So for the benefit of those who are not familiar with this term, VUCA is basically an acronym for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So thank God for acronyms, because I wouldn't want to say that word, over and over again. So VUCA is a combination of qualities that taken together characterize the nature of some difficult conditions and situations. Now, to put it in simple terms, VUCA is the reflection of the unpredictable nature of our business world and how things can change, and the curveballs that can be thrown from every corner. Take the current MCO, for example. Now, suddenly a month ago, companies with no BCPs were scrambling to find ways for business continuation during the MCO. Because of this, you probably have to deal with price fluctuations from suppliers during and after the MCO. So that can be characterized as volatility. An example out of the MCO context would be where your direct competitor introduces a new product that clouds the future of the business or the market. These are all examples of scenarios related to VUCA, which very much demonstrates the modern day business climate. Now, companies are basing their business module on VUCA so that their business can adapt, anticipate, and react to the unpredictable nature of the business world. And today I'm going to explain how process automation or digital transformation is the best way forward to help adapt to this VUCA or unpredictable business world. First off, I'd like to briefly discuss on the importance of digital transformation from a company's perspective. Business flexibility. During this MCO, we can see how important it is to have digital processes available in your company, especially cloud-based solutions. We've seen during this period how essential it is to have the right tools for your employees to work from home. If your business data is accessible through cloud, this would enable your employees to continue running the company at any point of time. Bearing in mind that most, if not everyone, has access to high-speed internet these days already. It encourages collaboration across departments. Yeah. So with digital solution in place, it is easier to communicate to achieve certain goals within the company itself. When each department is aware of what the rest of the company are doing, this can foster a great team understanding that would enhance your day-to-day operations. Attracting the right talent. Of course, digital transformation will also help attract better talents to your company. As the younger generation comes into workforce, it is important to note that these young candidates have grown up in a digital era and would be very used to information or data at their fingertips. Not having the right tools or solutions within your company could frustrate these younger employees, and might discourage them from choosing to work at your company. In fact, digital solutions within the company can help foster a digital culture and help promote a progressive mindset of the employees, which will drive the business forward. Now I'm going to discuss about the importance of process automation or digitization from a HR perspective. Taking into account our current MCO situation, I've listed down the benefits of digitization based on two different scenarios, which is one in a regular setting, which is, we can say pre-MCO or post-MCO, or in the current MCO setting. Now, in our regular setting, or shall I say, before this whole MCO was implemented, digitization has always increased efficiency in our work. With automation, we no longer are spending time doing manual work that can be done by an AI or a software. Anything that can be automated will be automated. When you're no longer doing manual work, this saves time and ultimately manpower. This basically leads to a reduction in cost and better allocation of time for a resource. Basically, you can now spend more time doing meaningful work. Digitization also drives database insights. Process automation usually allows data to be available to you at your fingertips. Prior to digitization, data collection can be a real pain. Now with process automation, data can be available to you instantly. Now with the time saved from all the manual work and the data readily available to you, you can now spend more meaningful time with your work, such as strategy planning for a department or business development. You will be able to make a lot of positive changes within your organization with data strategy. In fact, now we'll just go to our MCO setting. While we are not allowed to go to offices, the beauty of digitization is that these benefits mentioned earlier are still available to you at this point of time. In fact, digitization has now provided a solution for you in terms of business continuity. This is, of course, based on the accessibility of your company to cloud-based data. Communication during this period is key. So access to proper communication channels should be available to employees for communication and monitoring. Next up, I thought I'd just briefly share about the digitization here at Health Metrics and how it's getting us through this MCO period and to allow our business continuation. Now here at Health Metrics, we've always adopted a very proactive approach in running our business. We always had proper communication channels and cloud access to our work materials even prior to MCO. Just thought I'd share with you that we use Microsoft Teams to communicate on work and share necessary development tools with each other. So we are basically very well equipped in a VUCA context. Of course, when everyone's working from home, it is essential for organizations to use proper monitoring and tracking tools to monitor the productivity of employees. This is mainly done through Microsoft Teams throughout the whole company. However, our marketing team has been using another effective method, which is in the form of a bot. So basically, this bot will schedule a daily check-in with each member of the team, and each of them would then need to list out their list of tasks for the day. These tasks are then consolidated into a channel where everyone is able to view what your tasks are for a day. So this is a very innovative way of monitoring employee productivity. And of course, let's not forget about engagement. During this MCO, it can get quite depressing and mundane working from home. So our people team here has done a great job in engagement during this time. We just did a session last week, actually. It's called Kahoot. So basically, we carry out a company-wide quiz on this software, and it's actually very, very useful, and we all had fun with it. So I would highly recommend you try this with your employees during this period, just to get some engagement going, get them to speak to you a little bit, and just to find out how and see how their day is going. So yeah, do let us know on the chat what kind of software or communication channels you are using during this period to stay in touch with your employees. I feel like a YouTuber now, leave a comment below. All right. Now, I know we are encouraged to automate our processes, but I just want to remind you that you should be strategic in identifying which processes can be replaced by technology and which ones still require human touch. There are plenty of HR processes that can be looked into when it comes to automation. For example, when it comes to recruitment and retention, an AI can be used to match the job description of a vacancy to the existing talent pool. When it comes to responding to HR inquiries, the use of a chatbot can replace HR personnel at the front desk. Compensation and benefits can be automated as well. And in relation to healthcare management, health metrics would be the ideal solution to have. Now, I'd just like to speak a little bit about health metrics, healthcare automation with health metrics. When it comes to healthcare management, it is important to understand that our solution is based on problems or challenges faced by HRs when it comes to healthcare management. First, it's the administrative work. Without automation, there would be a whole lot of work in terms of manual tracking. The number of MCs, for example, an employee has taken, the amount of entitlement left for the year for each employee, all of these would need to be manually tracked. HRs would most likely also face issues with MCs as well. There are many cases where employees have purchased fake MCs, which is very hard to track. Manual work would also mean limited access to medical data, as most clinics do not list the diagnosis on the MC or the receipt. Also, the lack of digitization means that data is not readily available to make accurate changes within the organization. And of course, even if you are able to consolidate these data, it would simply take too much effort to consolidate from multiple platforms. You probably have to look across different Excel sheets for the different data that you're looking into. This is where health metrics comes in with a digital solution. First, it's the administrative work. There will no longer be a need for HRs to track employee spending or MCs taken, as this is all automated on the health metrics portal. The days of receiving fake MCs are also gone. Our panel clinics issue digital MCs that will be sent straight to the HR's portal for tracking. Employee medical data is also available. All clinic visits are recorded in the system along with the treatments that the employee has sought for. These data are all readily available with the click of a button. With the time you've saved consolidating and getting this actual data, you are now also equipped to make data-driven decisions and changes for your company. And of course, all of these analytics are consolidated into one single platform, so you do not need to go to multiple channels to look for the information that you're looking for. Our solution for corporates comes in the form of two platforms. We have a portal for you, the HRs, as well as a mobile app for the employees. Access to all the data that I've mentioned earlier are accessed through the health metrics portal for employers, which of course would mostly be used by the HRs. Some of the examples of data available to you, for example, would be the treatment report. With the treatment report, you can now see what's the reason your employees go to clinic the most for. If it's, for example, flu, you could consider getting a flu or vaccination across the organization to reduce flu-related MCs for the rest of the year. This here is an example of data-driven decision. And on top of that, you can also see trends of spending from a month-to-month or year-to-year basis. This would help you project or forecast your budget for the year and for the following year in relation to healthcare. Some other interesting data is also available, for example, like popular MC days. So if you see a suspicious trend of high MC days on Monday or Friday, you may want to consider some engagement activities on those days to sort of give employees motivation to not miss out on work. So, you know, that again is an example of data-driven decisions. And we have a mobile app for employees as well. Everyone loves a new app these days. So we've got one for the employees. The employee mobile app basically allows employees to view their charges for each visit. They see what their annual entitlement balance is for the rest of the year. And it also helps them locate nearby panels. So the availability of this app would take away inquiries from your end as the HR. They wouldn't need to reach out to you to find out about their healthcare entitlements. Another one of our useful functions of the employee app is also our non-panel reimbursement feature. Especially during this MCO, it'd be difficult for employees to submit any receipts for their claims. Our reimbursement feature works for other lifestyle benefits as well. For example, if your company has gym membership allowance, sports equipment allowance, or language allowance, these can be claimed through our mobile app. The employee will simply need to take a picture of the receipt and send it to the HR via the employee app. And once the claim is approved by HR, Health Metrics would then reimburse the claim back to the employee's account. This would be really, really useful for you and for your employees, especially during this MCO. Just thought I'd share with you some of the initiatives Health Metrics has taken during this MCO. We've developed a COVID-19 doc bot that the employees can access to check on their symptoms and gauge whether it's necessary to take a COVID-19 test. Another one of our initiatives is telemedicine. This is a concept that allows patients to speak with a doctor remotely over video call to assess their symptoms. This can be used whether or not it is COVID related. Now, I like to stress that telemedicine function is still in the pilot phase and has not been fully launched. We will provide more information on this once it's launched. Just a quick recap on the benefits of healthcare management with Health Metrics. Firstly, you get to monitor your employee every time they check into a clinic. It is efficient. You no longer need to have to track your healthcare benefits manually. The data you have allows you to do proper budget projection. You can now make data-driven decisions based on the understanding of medical trend within your company. And also any lifestyle benefit claims can be managed through us as well. And even in our current MCO setting, all of these benefits are available to you, to our clients. Our software is cloud-based, so you can access the portal at any location as long as you have a stable internet connection. There's no service disruption even at this point. Our support team is still online and available to support you throughout this period. And of course, we are proactive and a forward-thinking company, so we do always take initiative to look for ways to improve our services and features all the time. Just to wrap up, here are some key takeaways. Digitize your business and your processes. Digitization basically helps you equip yourself better to deal with the calamities of a VUCA world. You'd be more prepared to adapt to changes in a digitized company. Again, I want to stress on the importance of data analytics. and making data-driven decisions. We at Health Metrics believe in manage, measure, and improve. So data analysis and data-driven decisions will help you make more accurate decisions for your company and is the best way to improve. And of course, manage your healthcare benefits with us. We'd be happy to take you through our product and help you digitize your processes. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll take you through all of it. And yep, that's about it. Here are my contact details. We'll be sending out these slides. And thank you for listening. I hope everyone stays safe during this MCO. And handing it over back to you, Siti.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Elon. So I guess our sharing session today is, I would say, very informative and very insightful because most of the people do understand. And let me just go back to the question. We only have 2 questions. So since you're here, there's 2, one for John and one for you, Elon. So both are from Khatijah, the one that I got from the chat. So what is the typical employee referral compensation? So I believe this one is for you, John. Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Khatijah, thanks for the question.
Right.
So actually, what is the typical employee referral award? It's actually a very hard question to answer. I think the lowest one I've heard of is 300 ringgit, and the highest one I've heard of is 5,000 ringgit. So that's a huge difference. I think the key thing is to do a bit of market research. I'm sorry, my kids have just run in. I don't know if you can hear them in the background, but do a bit of research. I would advise tiering it by seniority. So the more senior the role they refer a candidate for, the more they get. And I would have it tiered from 500 ringgit for the lowest and up to about 2,000 ringgit for the highest. So in increments of 500 ringgit for executive, assistant manager, director, chief, etc. Compared to the price you would pay for a headhunter, it's nothing. I hope that answers your question.
Right.
Be flexible and also experiment and see if it gets results. Try it out for 6 months. If it doesn't work, change it and try it out again.
Right. Okay. Thanks a lot, John, for your response. So another one is, and again from Khatijah, where does the daily bot post the daily check-in? So I think I can help to explain a bit in terms of the daily bot because we've been using it a bit. So technically, every day we have this chat configured in Microsoft Teams because currently we're on Microsoft Teams. So this daily bot chat is actually helping us to ask questions on what we have been doing on yesterday working day. What are we going to do for today? And is there any blockers to our task? So usually as Elon shared earlier in his slides, so there is this 3, I would say, tabs for what's the work that you already did for yesterday works. And then there's one slot for one tab for what's the task that you're going to do today. And the next step is going to be blockers. And you'll be able to see what are the tasks and the blockers that's being doing and being faced by your team members through this app lah. Right. So I hope it answers your question, Khatijah. Right. Okay, Elon, I think this one is for you. We can take one last question before we wrap up. Can you explain more on the claims app that Elon mentioned just now? So this one is from Ollie. So
Yep, I'll take that. Hey, Ollie, yeah, thanks for the question. So basically, the claims app is available on our employee app itself. It's basically an add-on feature on our product. So there will be an extra tab on our employee app that allows the employee to just click on claims and they can submit their claims. So basically, there'll be a drop-down menu for them to select what is their claim about. For example, if it's a gym membership claim or something, they can just click on the tap on the gym membership claim, and then they can submit the amount. They can key in the amount and also submit their receipt together with it. So basically, they just need to take a picture of it and they can send it to to you to approve, and then we from Health Metrics, we will reimburse it back to them.
Right. Okay. So Ollie further asked in the question, can we set limits and show balances?
Yes, that is actually the very important one of the very important functions of our Health Metrics portal is that it's very flexible. It allows you to change and customize your benefits accordingly for your employees. So you can set the limits for your employees in accordance to their benefit groups. So for example, if an executive or manager level, you can also set what kind of benefits that they receive. So yes, I hope the answer yes to your question.
Right. Okay. So I think it's the last question for the day. So I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. I think it's a very interactive session. It's a very good sharing from both you, Elan, and also John. Thank you for joining us for today's session, and thank you everyone for attending this Stay at Home HR Summit. We'll be having a special session next Tuesday with Faudi Chitrus from Ramli Capital Holdings. So it's going to be somewhat an interview kind of session. So stay tuned for the invitations. We're going to be releasing it soon. Until our next summit, I would like to advise everyone to always wash your hands, practice a very high hygiene level in your homes, stay home, stay safe, take care, and hope to see you guys soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Siti. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Ellen.